Hello again. Good morning to everyone. I think we have 65 people already joined the webinar, so we can slowly start, I believe. And then if someone will be joining in the last minute, they will just join us during the presentation. So I see people from many countries here today. So thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Those who are joining us after the basic webinar, which was on Friday, they already know the drill. So-called drill, we will have a short introduction now. I will present the agenda and just a little bit of communication rules and the logistics of the webinar itself. So if you already been on Friday in our webinar, maybe you can have you can make yourself a cup of tea or something right now, just to prepare for the advanced part, which will be presented later. But I will skip to the agenda and the speakers. Today we will be having advanced version of the webinar presented by Jason from SolarEdge. I believe he will introduce himself once he starts his presentation. Myself, I'm just going to shortly present, like I said, the logistics of the webinar and a little bit about our company, Solarity. And my colleague Nicola, who is responsible for sales in Solarity for Balkan region, he will be here as well. He will be there for those of you who would like to, for example, ask some questions to Jason during the webinar. You can do that by going to Q&A section, as I see some people have already done. So you can type your questions there. You can type them in your language, and Nicola will translate it to Jason in English, and we will also have translation to your language. Speaking of that, by the way, we have this webinar will be done in 2 languages simultaneously. So those of you who are hearing me now, you can do that by you can switch to Slovenian language. If you just click on the globe icon, you should see it in your Zoom panel on the bottom right. So you need to select German, I believe, because there is no yeah, that's just the limitation of Zoom. If you select German language, you should be able to hear our interpreter to Slovenian language. So if you have any questions about that, please ask. If you have any technical difficulties doing that. Also, I see that my colleague wrote in the chat how to do it precisely. So I hope everyone will be able to switch to the convenient language channel for them, either English or Slovenian. Okay, so just a few words before we actually start with the SolarEdge part. I just want to present a few slides about Solarity. For those of you who already work with us, I believe this will be not so very new information, but it's just useful to refresh the knowledge about us. As you probably know, Solarity exists in the business of solar energy since 2009. So we were started as an installation company in Czech Republic, and then after a couple of years, we have graduated to distributorship business. So we started supplying equipment for solar installations to our clients and partners throughout Europe from 2011. And by now we've become, so like we could say, recognized international distributor. So we don't work only in Europe, we work in different regions. We work in Middle East and North Africa. Generally, we right now have partners and clients in more than 30 countries around the world. Per year, we supply equipment in the volumes of more than 150 megawatts. That's in all those 30 plus countries together. That's modules, inverters, accessories, We will talk about our portfolio in a couple of slides. At the same time, we also have more than 10 nationalities. So I'm Ukrainian myself. I already mentioned my colleague Nicola, who is responsible for Balkan region. So we have very international team in Solarity, which is very natural since we work in so many countries and so many regions, right? We also have several offices. Our headquarters is based in Prague, but in Czech Republic. We'll talk about that in the next slide. Main role of Solarity is to help you focus on your business, which is installation of solar PV sites, either residential or sites or commercial projects. So we are here to take care of everything that you need as a supply chain between the manufacturers and you. We are more than just a distributor. So this webinar is one of the proofs or one of the examples of added value that we bring to our clients and our partners. So we have the technical know-how. We provide different technical support from just written clarifications about your projects. If you have some project needs to something like this, like webinars or trainings, which we actually have Solarity Academy with running webinars and trainings throughout the year. You can subscribe to that through our website or through our newsletter. You can track and see what's the calendar of the webinars, such as this one for this year. We try to provide the best price on the market. We also have several partner program levels regarding to prices. As you probably know, as I said, if you already worked with us, then you know this. We provide local support, which is very important because we work in different markets, so we can help you with different grid regulation support regarding some certified inverters or equipment that is supported in your country. And we have logistic services which span throughout Europe and the whole world. So we know how to deliver from pallets to containers to megawatts from very different regions in the world to basically any point on the map. Like I said, we have headquarters in Czech Republic, in Prague. At the same time, we have 4 offices throughout Europe, which is you see on the map in orange. And we also have office in Amman, Jordan, and Dubai right now in United Arab Emirates. And at the same time on the map, you can see in yellow the markets in which we operate mainly. So today's webinar is actually focused for Baltic markets, which is Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, and the Balkan region, which is in the south of Europe, as you know. So majority of you are joining from that region, I believe, or I hope today. Yeah, in Europe, so yeah, as I mentioned, we have offices in Amman, Jordan, and United Arab Emirates, but today is the webinar for our European customers. So in Europe, we have more than 40 employees. We have a warehouse in Prague, our main warehouse in Czech Republic in the center of Europe, which is very good for geographically for deliveries to different regions of Europe. In our warehouse, we keep more than 5 megawatts of equipment at all times. So that's including modules, inverters, cables, connectors, all types of accessories, batteries, and so on and so forth. In the last 12 months in Europe, we delivered more than 120 megawatts of such equipment to our partners and customers. When we choose with whom we work, meaning what kind of equipment we represent, we try to select the best quality because given our history on the market, we realize that it's not sustainable to try to work with not not the best quality on the market, because then you can run into different problems in the future with the warranties and so on. So we are always very careful about our portfolio, what we add to our portfolio and what we keep there. So you can be sure when you work with us and when you see some products that we represent, that you can be sure that there was a lot of thought and a lot of energy put into the process of selecting different brands and different products into our portfolio. So you can be sure about the quality, and it should be easy to sell for you, easy to install, and it is a proven performer on the market. So you can see right now on the slide the different brands that we work with, and of course one of them is SolarEdge, which today the whole presentation will be about. Both for residential offers, we offer, for residential projects, we offer everything from modules to, like I said, accessories. Also now we see very big spike in interest to energy storage products and EV products, so EV charging for electric vehicles. You can find it on our website, shop.solarity.cz. You can ask our sales representatives for different offers or suggestions if you have such needs. And also for commercial projects, we supply everything as well, from modules to accessories. You can see our project offers as well, I believe, on our website in the product section. So we are your solar partner. We are here not just for the sunny days. We aim to be your one-stop supplier from every need that you have, and we also aim to help educate you and help you understand the latest trends in the market. So today, I hope that the webinar about SolarEdge will be very helpful for you. So at this time, I would like to pass. Oh no, just one more thing actually. Before I pass the word to Jason, I would like to test one feature in Zoom and offer you a poll about SolarEdge. So there's a question: what makes you use SolarEdge? And there are different answers. And what experience do you have with SolarEdge energy storage systems? This webinar today is for experienced installers, so I hope that many of you will be able to answer this question. So I will just like to give you all like 1 minute or 30 seconds to please give your answers, and then after that we can proceed. Great, I see already more than a third voted. So let's give it 10 more seconds and very well. 50 people voted already. So I believe we can share voting results now. I will end polling and share results. So it's very interesting. Predictably, I believe that 74% of people are using SolarEdge because of module level monitoring and optimization. Very well that people selected also DC safety option. So I believe this is some food for thought for Jason and for our SolarEdge colleagues. And what experience do you have with energy storage systems? You already have installed, and majority have no experience but are interested, I believe, because their customers are very interested as well. So thank you very much for the answers. And yes, I would like to now, Jason, pass the word to you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning. I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully it will be the right screen. If you could just let me know if you can see that.
Yes, we can see it.
Excellent. Okay, so good morning, everybody. My name is Jason Kirrage. I work for SolarEdge. I've worked for SolarEdge for nearly 6 years now. I started my career initially as an apprentice electrician. I worked my way up to an electrical engineer. I started with SolarEdge as a field engineer for 2 years and then technical marketing manager for the remainder. I cover UK, Ireland, Scandinavia, the Nordics, the Baltics, and what we class as Middle East Europe, which is pretty much where you are. And that's it. I'm responsible for the products hitting the market, anything on the market, training, anything that you would like. So if you have any ideas that you see SolarEdge not meeting your needs, then just contact me and I will do my best to make sure we add those. And that's pretty much it. I'm here to help in any way that I can. So I've got my email on there. I will put my email in the chat as soon as I remember where the chat's disappeared to. I think it's here. Nope. There we go. Nope. I'll find the chat in a minute and I'll put it on. So anyway, for the presentation, you can see my emails on there, jason.k@solaredge.com. So let's begin. So we've got 2 hours, but we will have a break in between. And at some point, naturally, in the progression of the slides, we'll pause. And hopefully that will be fine by everybody.
Silka, sorry for interrupting you. We are just very poorly hearing you. Can you please just check your connection, because we cannot hear you properly.
Okay to proceed? Okay, I shall carry on. So one of the important things with SolarEdge, you've already picked up on the poll, is the module level electronics, but there are other features on there where equally as important. And just to recap on the benefits of these, Safe DC, as we see, we have lots of benefits with SolarEdge, and these are one of the advantages with Safe DC. You're probably familiar with arc fault circuit interruption or arc fault detection. It seems to be quite a common phrase these days that you see from manufacturers. And detecting an arc is great because what that does, that allows you to know there's an arc. But unless you can do something about that arc, it doesn't really help. So one way to stop an arc is obviously to remove the current. And to remove the current, you need to open the circuit. Now, if the particular string is shorting out to the array, that's very difficult to remove that because you would need to control the voltage or current at the module level. And to do that,
Excuse me, Silka, but there are some people that are saying that they cannot hear you very well. Would you have any headphones or any better microphone by any chance, or maybe speaking louder would be better? Silka, can you hear me?
Sorry. Okay, so I will speak slower. So as I said, one of the benefits is that at the module, if you do fit an optimizer, as you know, that optimizer controls the current, it controls the voltage from the module. So this is a great feature, and this is the Safe DC feature. This allows us to send a signal, or to stop the keep alive signal, I should say. So every time the inverter is on and we are producing, every 40 milliseconds, you have a signal sent from the inverter to the optimizers to tell them to keep alive, to stay on. And as soon as that signal is lost, so that could be if the cable was cut, if it was unplugged, if you were to turn the AC off, or if you were to turn the DC isolator, or simply switch the inverter to off position, then the keep alive signal would be stopped. All the optimizers would automatically drop to 1 volt. Dropping to 1 volt allows you to have on a commercial string 50 volts per string maximum. On a residential string, 25 volts maximum per string. And also, it removes the current level from about 15 amps, 14 to 15 amps, which is in a normal string, to around 200 to 300 milliamps. So we have arc-fault circuit interrupter. This detects an arc, a parallel arc or a series arc. And then using the safe DC, we then turn off the optimizers. We stop the optimizers from letting the voltage through and reduce the current to below 300 milliamps. This then reduces the arc, because the arc is basically a jump between two conductive pieces of equipment through air. So that reduces the current and therefore stops the arc. So having arc fault circuit interrupter or arc detection that you see other inverters have, other manufacturers have, is great, but you must have a way of controlling that current. And the only products out there, which is the SolarEdge optimizer, the power optimizer, this controls the current and reduces it from 14 to 15 amps, which we tend to run, down to 300 to 200 milliamps, as I said. The beauty of this is if you want to remove a module, if you have a faulty module, or you need to remove something for access, or maybe some extra equipment is being installed on the roof, you simply switch off the inverter, and it's incredibly safe for you to then open that string, break that string. There's no harmful voltage. The voltage is below 50 volts or 25 volts. Current is reduced, so it's safe for you to work on that roof, safe for you to do fault finding. There's no risk of high voltage or high current. With the panel level monitoring, it's very easy to see which modules are shaded, which modules have module mismatch. So as you know, every module has plus or minus 3% energy difference. And if it was a traditional system, you'd all be operating at the lowest performing module. So SolarEdge allows each panel, each module, or each pair of modules to work at their optimum performance. You can record all this information. All this is available in the analysis tab, and it will go back to the day you installed it. So there's no time limit on the information, like 2 days, a month, a year. It's available there, and we can go back as far as 2012 in the UK. That's when we installed the first system. So 2000, 2011, and 2012. We can go all the way back there to some installations and see exactly what each optimizer was doing, each inverter on that particular day, the first day. The other beauty is that you have a minimum of 6 MPPTs per string, or 8 MPPs, or 14, depending on the optimizers you use and whether it's single phase or 3-phase. This is great because it can then increase and decrease the voltage and the current to maximize the power. So this is how you adapt for shading. Now remember, shading is not the shading that you see on day one when you're there looking. Shading is anything. Shading can be animals, birds, cats lying on the modules because it's nice and warm. It can be birds sitting on there. It can be snow. It can be soiling. It can be clouds, that's shading, anything. Shading is not static. Shading does not stay in place. The tree that you might see when you install the array in 5 years' time will grown, and obviously that will cause shade. So it's very important that you adapt and make sure you fit the power optimizers. And it's nice to see on the poll that you had that you already realized the beauty and benefit of the power optimizers. I've already spoken about artful circuit interruptions, but there's only one standard at the moment. There's another standard, an IEC standard, which is in draft form, but that's not released yet. That's only draft. So this is the only standard the world has at the moment for artful circuit interruption. And it's an American standard, a North American standard. As I said, the IEC is in draft. We've had a look at that. We know our optimizers are perfectly fine and incredibly safe for this standard. So we will be able to meet the new standard, the new IEC standard when it arrives. But at the moment, the only standard out there available is the UL 1699B. We have the adaptability with our inverters for storage, which is the SolarEdge term for storage, so StoraEdge, EV for electric vehicles, and also smart energy. So all these are available to you. Some require a different inverter. The EV inverter is single phase, and that is a EV charging single phase inverter, and it's based on the HD wave. So that's a single phase product. But storage, that's available in both single phase and three phase. And we'll look at that later on today. As we said here, it's all available, and from 2016 onwards, you can have the storage, the EV, and the smart energy, and that just requires a firmware update. Remote support, because because all of our systems, we prefer them to be online. We would say that 95% of all issues we can diagnose and resolve remotely. So we can monitor your system as you can, but we can dial into the optimizers. We can talk to the optimizers. We can talk to the inverters, and we can see different things. We can adjust the settings on the optimizers and the inverters as well. So we can confident we can resolve 95% of all issues without you having to go to site. We'll cover at the end what the best practice is, how to speak to SolarEdge, how to contact them, how to report a case. We'll cover that today as well. And the beauty of it all, because we do storage, we do smart energy, we do EV, we do inverters, we do optimizers, we do meters, is it's one point of contact. So you won't have the conversation where other manufacturers are blaming each other, saying that their part isn't compatible with our part. With SolarEdge, all the parts are compatible, and they are all under the same phone number or the same email. And you tend to speak to the same people in support as well. We do have product experts, obviously, but support have a very good level of all the products. So if you have an issue with an optimizer or an inverter, probably the next day you might be speaking to someone about EV or smart energy or storage. You might be speaking to the same person. They will all know pretty much what to do. So we'll just quickly go over artful circuit interruption first of all. Just a very brief explanation of it. I've already said in the just to catch up that basically it's the arc that can start the fire. It's the arc that raises the temperature, and that can also pose electrocution. So if you can remove the arc, and with the power optimizers, we could do that. We can simply turn off the power optimizers from 14 to 15 amps, say, down to 200 to 300 milliamps. We can reduce that arc. Just 1 second. Oh, too far. And it's very, very simple to install. It doesn't come automatically set on your inverter. What you have to do at the moment is using Setup, or if you have the LCD screens, it's still available from 2016. So the LCD screens will still have this. Simply go to maintenance. After connecting to Setup to the inverter, you then go to maintenance. You then go to arc fault circuit interruption. As you can see on here, it's disabled. Just here, this bit here, just disabled. And then you click on that, you click on the arrows here, and you switch to enable, and that's it done. Now we will be releasing a firmware. I think we're 2 firmwares away. Well, it automatically will set the arc fault circuit interruption to enabled. Setup. You've probably seen this. It's an app on your Google Play or your iPhone, Android. Sorry, your iPhone. I can't remember what it's called for iPhone, but it's on the App Store, App Store. Sorry. And you download it. The apps are free. We have Setup, we have Mapper, we have Monitoring app. We also have for your customers an app called My SolarEdge, and that's very good as well. So you can download all the apps. They're all free, and once you get it with Setup, you can then communicate to the inverter. Most smartphones won't have an issue with it. I think it's as far back as 2006, the operating software on phones. So you shouldn't have an issue with anything. You can use a phone, you can use a tablet. Basically, any device that can connect using Wi-Fi. You don't have to have this permanently on. You don't have to have a SIM card in it, just as long as it can connect to the Wi-Fi. First of all, make sure that the app is updated. So you would do that by going onto the Wi-Fi of a building if you didn't have a SIM card, or just using your mobile phone, and it will update automatically. Then while you're on site, you connect to it by simply scanning the QR code on the side of it, and it allows you to set all kinds of devices on there. Now, one of the questions I had this morning was about grid protection and can I change it? Well, if you see on here, we do have grid protection on here, and there is a password that you can use to change this. So should you be asked to allow the over voltage, under voltage, and under frequency and over frequency, if you can change those, you can. Okay, and you do need a password. So if you need this, please email me, and I will send you the application notes on how to do it. The setup automatically updates the firmware onto your phone, so there's no need for a SD card as we used to do it back in the day, and that's it. Just simply updates and away you go, and it allows you to access everything on there. As I said, you can download it from Google Play or from the App Store. It does the firmware upgrade and activation. Sometimes this can take a few moments depending on how long the inverter's been on the shelf for. Generally, it takes about 6 months at the most from a inverter leaving the manufacturing plant to getting to your distributor and then getting to you. So sometimes in that 6 months, we've updated the firmware, we've changed things, we've added things. And that's why you might have to wait maybe 5 or 10 minutes sometimes, depending on the gap between the firmware that you have on the inverter and the firmware that you have on your phone. That's all. But it's only a one-off thing. So once you've done that, that's it. You won't need to spend another 5 or 10 minutes there. You can then set the country, the language, pair the optimizers, and then configure the system. So there's the apps there, the mapper, the monitoring one, and then the setup. There's also a PV self-consumption app, which you can download. It just gives you an idea of what sort of array you would need. The one that's missing from here is the My SolarEdge app. That's all. If you haven't got an account with SolarEdge and it's your first time you're using it, don't worry. You can register there and then as an installer, and you can create your account. Or if you've already got an account, then you just put your email and your password that you already have. If you have new people joining your team to work for you, best advice is to go to your account. So that's your home. When you're there, go to users and then add people's emails that way. That's the best way, rather than everybody opening up a new account. It's very straightforward. You just follow the fields that you need to fill out. Some you have to fill out, and some you don't. And you can see on there when you do it. And once you've done it, you've got the QR code to scan. You've got the switch underneath that you need to hold. And please, when you do it, please, you don't need to hold it any more than 2 seconds. If you hold it more than 5 seconds, it will go into the pairing mode, which you may remember used to be on the LCD inverters. So just hold it for just 2 seconds. Just go 1, 2, and release. That's all you need to do. It will update the firmware, it will connect, and then it will allow you to get into the commissioning screen. So you've got your country and language. If you don't have a language that you need, please email me and we'll try and get that added for you. And likewise, if you don't have any settings, so your regional settings, if you don't have those, please email me and we'll try and get them added for you. There is a generic Europe EN, I think it's this one, or it might be a 505 or 506 now, that you can use. So if you don't have your country settings, please email me and we'll get them set up for you. Pairing, there's 3 different ways to pair. One we've already talked about, which is holding the switch for more than 5 seconds in the P position. The second one is using setup and pairing. And the third one is via the monitoring. You go to your monitoring site, you can right click on the inverter, and then it says to perform a task or an operation. You click on that and you have 2. One is AC reset, which just basically turns the inverter off. And the other one is to pair. So there's 3 ways you can pair. So if the weather's rather poor, dark, or it's quite late when you finish the job and you haven't paired it, very simple. Next morning, about midday, you can just go to the site and you can pair it remotely. Commissioning, we use the term RS485. You can actually get a cable called RS485 cable. This is shielded and this will give you a kilometer, so 1,000 meters of cable for the entire site. If you use Cat5 or Cat6, what this will do, this will limit your communication distance to 100 meters. So RS485 cable is what we recommend. You've got 2 things on here you might have noticed, is now we've changed it to monitoring communication and site communication. So monitoring communication is from the inverter to the servers. So this could be Wi-Fi, this could be GSM, this could be static IP, that sorts of things, or just general internet. And site communication underneath, again, we've had another change. We've called it follower and leader. So leader there's 1 leader and up to 31 followers. So that would be site communication to talk to inverters, also to talk to the meters as well. The inner pro meter, which is a mid-approved meter, and the SolarEdge energy meter for import and export. And you simply just press on the arrow, and then we open up and you just follow the fields. What you can see on here, which is new or newish, is that when you detect your followers, you can actually see how many followers there are. You can see their serial number and the date and time that they reported in. So you get the confidence that everything is reporting in before you leave site. And my advice to you is to take screenshots of this information, to take pictures of your connections, the RS485 connections, so you can then pass them on to support should there be an issue. The most important one is the summary page or status page. And this here gives you the information of what's going on, your production, your site limit, how many inverters, the inverter serial number, the voltage and frequency, and if the optimizers are performing, and also SOK. SOK, you must have this S_OK. That's very important. That means that you're communicating to our servers and our servers are communicating back to you. So it's very important we have that. And then you can see on here, when this opens up, you simply scroll the page up. You've got how many optimizers are reporting. You've got SOK here. We're using Ethernet. Switch is on. Just general stuff here, DC power, voltage, and things like that. Temperature, isolation value. This is the one of the checks that the inverter will do. When the inverter turns on in the morning, or when it's switched on, or when it's available to start, it will do an isolation value check. Anything under 352 kiloohms, and the inverter will start. It also performs arc fault circuit interruption check as well before it starts, and then it produces, and that's it. Obviously grid checks as well. It does the grid checks. You can see on here, you can see on here the Modbus RS452 and RS451 for the old terminology of slave, which is now leader and follower. So each inverter has two RS485 connections, unlike the LCD screen. So we have two buses, one for connecting inverters together and firefighter gateways and consumer control gateways, and the second one for the meters. You can have either or, it doesn't matter which one you use. We do have more specific power controls, again in the main commissioning, where you've got reactive power, active power, and advanced settings, and you can change this to suit your region should you need to. Maintenance, it allows you to look at diagnostics, so this could be optimizers. It allows you to look at isolation value as well, do the inbuilt isolation test. And also information, gives you the latest firmware, serial numbers, and any information like that. We have, as you know, we've no longer have a screen, but there's reasons for that. One of the most important ones was that it allows the inverter to go in a much colder temperature, because the liquid crystal display would tend to freeze and not work at -20. So now the inverters will go down to -40. We did have a separate communication board that you could use for colder regions years ago when we had the LCD, but now all the inverters go down to -40. So because we don't have a screen on it, we have an LED underneath, and this basically allows you to understand what the inverter is doing. And the most important one of all is the blue one. Okay, this is looking at different things. Okay, so basically the blue being on is communication. So this is pairing failed, off, off, on. But generally you have the blue one is on permanently, and the green one is either blinking or solid. So loads of different things. This is the error types. Okay, this is the percentage of production. You'll be able to diagnose all this when looking at it, but generally the only thing you're concerned about, and the main important one, is this. The blue one is on, the green one is flashing when there's no production, and the green one is solid when there is production. And we do have a website here. Just simply go to SolarEdge.com and then type in LEDS. So LEDS afterwards, and you'll be able to see all of the different settings. But generally, blue is on, green is either flashing, or green is solid. That's the general things that you need to look at. This is a communication board here. It's the new one. And if you start at the 12 o'clock position here, you can see what we have is some slots here. And this is the slot for the GSM. So it allows you to use cellular technology. It's also the slot for a new product which is coming up, which I will. It's a new form of communication that we're working on. We also have on here for the communication between home automation or smart energy devices here. That would plug in there. This battery here is to keep the everything going should there be a power failure or should the inverter be turned off. You lose power. It's like a memory device, backup memory. Here is your Wi-Fi antenna. The Wi-Fi is comes included. All you need to do is purchase an antenna if you want to use the Wi-Fi. This is also how the inverter itself connects to your mobile phone. So because we have a Wi-Fi chip embedded, we can use the setup. Range of this is about 6 meters, so you don't have to be literally standing above the inverter to get communication. You can be about 6 meters away at the most. Coming down the bottom, we have what we call the power reduction interface. This allows the inverter to be controlled remotely. So it could be from a utility company via like a GSM device that the utility company tells the inverters to turn off or to power down. Or you could link it into your diesel generator, a backup generator. So when the backup generator comes on, the inverter again will reduce power. It does it in either in turning off completely, so the AC remains on, but the power is reduced, or we have 100%, we have 60%, we have 30%, and we have off. So they're the 3 different stages. So you can reduce the power. So utility companies can reduce the power of the inverters from 100% production at the time to 60% or 30% or off. Moving along, we have RS485 and RS485. As I said, both of these are supported. They both work. You can have the inverters connected in either of them, and the same for the meters in either of them. These are your end-of-line switches up here. The one on the left is for RS485. The one on the right here is for RS485. We have a USB device here which you can plug your phone charger in. So if you're worried about your battery not lasting while you're doing your updating or connecting to the inverter, you can plug your cable in here and you can charge your battery or your mobile phone here as well. And here's the Ethernet, which is standard. Simply plug this in and away we go. The other connections on this side are for the LED and also for the switch. So this is the new communication board. It's the same communication board used in the SE1000M, so the compact range, all the way up to the Synergy range. So it's exactly the same device. So this is the 3-phase storage. Which we said we do have single phase, but this is a 3-phase one. And we're going to look at the products now. So this is a different inverter. As you can see, it's like a normal inverter, but it's slightly longer. If you imagine a normal inverter would finish about here, and the part underneath here, this has got the DC to DC conversion in. So rather than having an interface, which we do for the single phase, it's all built into the inverter. So this is the inverter here. We then need a meter. You're probably familiar with this meter shape. We'll look at this meter later on as well. This meter here obviously measures the import and export, and will also tell the give the information to the inverter. The inverter is the brains. That will then decide whether to charge, discharge, or to just stand by. Batteries themselves, we have LG Chem and we have BYD. These are 48-volt batteries. There will be more batteries coming, different manufacturers. There will also be different amounts of batteries coming, the values and things like that. I have an application note and I will share it or share the link afterwards, and then you can all see that. We do have a list here of the batteries that are compatible. So the inverter itself is a 5, 7, 8, and 10. It discharges and at 5 kilowatts. So if you're using the AC couple version, you really only need the 5 kilowatt version. If you're using DC coupled or you've got PV, then obviously 10, 8, or 7. But if you're only using AC coupled, because the battery inverter discharges at 5 kilowatt, then you only need 5 kilowatt. Warranty is 12 years, and here is the LG Chem list here. There are a couple more added on, but I will send you the application note. And then we've got battery box, and then we've got the LVS. So the LVS is the latest battery from BYD. So yeah, you can use 2 different manufacturers at the moment, and there will be a generic data sheet which allows you to then look at other batteries and use those. Oops. We've got the supported system configurations. So as you can see, we've got the standard inverter, the storage inverter I've just shown you with the battery. This is supported and available. We've got an inverter with 2 batteries that will be planned for March this year. We've got SolarEdge inverter and other inverters and a battery again, which is available now. And then we've got multiple inverters with their own batteries, so single batteries, and that's available. That's already available. It was available in December. And then we've got using third-party installations. So third-party inverters, and then our storage system again is available. So the only thing you're waiting for now is the more than 1 battery per inverter. Just a note on here, the BYD is up to 24 kilowatt hours in 1 tower. We'll just go back to the previous side, and you can see on here the LVS here. So you can actually put 24 kilowatts of batteries behind this inverter. This is what it looks like. Underneath is slightly different to the normal inverter because we have some additional communication glands. And you'll see why later in the presentation why you have those. You've still got the DC connections here. You've got the LED. You've got the toggle switch here. AC gland, and then we have the battery connections here. We've also got the antenna. So the antenna can actually go at the bottom of the inverter like here. You don't have to run it and connect it on the top. It can go on the bottom. So inside, you'll recognize the same communication board, no difference here. What you can see on here is slightly different, is that we've got this a little bit added on, which is for the battery communication. This is CAN bus. All the cables themselves come with the equipment, so they just simply plug in. You don't have to purchase different cables of different lengths. Here is the Ethernet connection, here is the RS485 connection, and that's going to the meter here, as you can see. So let's have a look at how it would impact on your design. So here is the PV array here. Here's the power optimizers, your energy meter, your inverter, and your battery. So it's 48-volt battery connected with CAN bus, and you can have BYD or you can have LG. Okay, let's have a quick look at what happens now. You can connect 3 different loads to it because obviously it's a 3-phase storage system. The meter itself will connect, and the battery will connect, and the PV connects to it. There's the meter connecting with the 3 CTs, 1 per phase. And please also note that L1 is connected to L1 CT, and also L1 is on here shown as the L1. So please make sure the phases correspond. And then last of all, you've got your internet connection, which could be wireless, could use direct to the modem, or could be GSM. And you can see this on your monitoring platform as well. So the installation of the product, we're going to look at mounting the inverter, installing the battery, connecting the inverter, connecting the battery to the inverter, and commissioning by setup. So there's a couple of rules here. The first one is clearance, simply because the inverter needs to dissipate its heat. You can see on here, there should be exactly the same as what you're familiar with, 40 centimeters on top, 10 centimeters to the side and 10 to the bottom. Distance between the battery and the inverter is a minimum of 40 centimeters, but you must have a cable of 5 meters here. That's the most you can have. So maximum cable length is 5 meters. This is the DC side, okay? DC side. It's the same bracket with all inverters. You install it exactly the same way. You then hook the inverter on the wall and you do the 2 screws up on the side. But with this particular one, you have a couple of bolts underneath. So you have a bracket just to secure underneath, similar to the DC safety unit. So if you're familiar with the DC safety unit that SolarEdge have on their inverters, it's exactly the same thing. Once you've done that, you can then remove the cover and you're left with this part here. So this is the inverter part, as I said, and then underneath is a DC to DC conversion. What you need to do, obviously, is to make sure that the DC is either 35 mil or 50 mil. Now, we prefer 35 mil. 50 mil is a bit of a squeeze to get in. So 35 mil, remember, you don't have to do a run more than 5 meters. Then you've got the CAN bus, believe it or not, is 30 meters maximum. But again, you can only go from here to here with maximum 5 meters, so you don't need 30 meters of CAN bus. RS485 cable, again, if you use that, you'll get a kilometer. If you use Cat5, Cat6, you'll get 100 meters. And normal 6 mil solar flex between your optimizers and your inverter. So installing the batteries, obviously make sure everything is turned off, read the manual that comes with it, read the quick guide, read the manual as well. It's very important you do that. Then make sure that you set the battery dip switches before mounting the battery, and I'll show you where these are. Make sure the cables are the right length, so no more than 5 meters for the DC to the battery, and mark the polarity. So mark both ends of your positive cable. Unlike the PV array, which is in series, so plus to minus, the battery connections are always plus to plus. What we're doing on here is we're removing the AC tunnel. This is just a compartment that houses the AC connection. So the AC cable comes in the bottom, as you can see up here, and then runs up the top, and the AC connects in here. So same place on all the inverters. It connects in exactly the same place. All we're doing is you're just using this tunnel just to protect it, to keep it separate. As you can see, there's the cable in the tunnel in here. Also, we've got some ferrite beads that you must put around the cable as well, and then secure the tunnel back on. So the AC cable now goes through, has the ferrite beads at the top, and that's it. That's the AC done, pretty simple. Next is the DC. Again, you can see on here that the optimizers just connect in. So you've got 2 strings on these. And here are the DC cables with, again, a ferrite bead around them. You must put the ferrite bead on them. So once you've done all of that, you've then got the RS485. I've showed you where the dip switches are on the communication board to start with. This is the meter, which you're familiar with. If you're not familiar with, we do cover this later on. You simply wire a BAG connection. So you can see on here, BA, G is ground. I think the B is minus and the A is positive, and that's ground. You don't need a huge cable size for this, because there's only 7 volts traveling on this cable. The most you would probably need is a standard RS485 cable, a standard Cat5, Cat6, and you only need 1 pair. You don't need to double up, so just 1 pair. So 1 pair, either blue and white with blue, or brown or white with brown. That's a pair. Once you've done the connections on here, we'll look at these later on anyway. So connection on the inverter, and then a connection on the meter, which is just here. That's that side done. Then we've got the installation of the actual battery cables. What we recommend you to do is, because you have to put heat shrink over the lugs, you know, these the ends here. What we recommend is you cut the cable to the right length, you strip the cable, you put the lug on, you put the heat shrink on, you then put the ferrite coil on, and then when you've done that, you then pass the cable through the inverter. So not into the inverter, but through and out. It's a lot easier that way than having to pull them up, crimp them, put the heat shrink on, and then try and mount them here. So do it before and then pass the cables through. That's what we recommend. And you can see on here where they terminate here. There's the ferrite bead there, as such. And there's the 2 holes. So the last piece is the communication, and this is for the CAN bus, and this was the extra bit. So this little bit here, which is on the inverter, is this bit here blown up, and you can see we've got some dip switches here and dip switches here. So what you must do, there's 2 different manufacturers, BYD and LG, as you can see. BYD is a switch up, so this is this one here, BYD up, LG Chem down, and then these 2 on. So just be careful that you've got the dip switches. So you've got dip switches inside here for the meter communication, and obviously if you have any followers or leaders on here, and then the dip switch for the battery. The CAN bus cable actually just plugs in here and plugs in here, so it's pretty straightforward. There's a dip switch turning on. This is a compartment you take out, and then you run your RJ45 cable into here for the CAN bus. So commissioning and troubleshooting. We'll have a look at this now. Not quite sure if we'll carry on and we'll have a little break. I don't think I've got many. Well, I've actually got quite a few slides on here. So if we want to have a 5-minute break now, and then we'll carry on, if that's okay with everybody. We'll come back about 10 past, if that's all right, or 11 minutes past.
Sounds good, Jason. And in the meantime, we will ask also another poll question. I think this is a good time for that.
Okay.
Yeah, so the question asked should be, it's what kind of support is the most important for you as installers? What kind of support do you need from SolarEdge or from your distributors? So please take your time during this 5-minute break and give us an answer.
Okay, are we all ready to carry on?
Yes, Jason. So we can share. I can share the results, and thank you everyone for voting. Maybe you can mention a couple of words, Jason. It's up to you if you want to say a couple of words about the SolarEdge Academy and where people can
Yes.
find the trainings. And also there was a question in the chat. If you can look at it.
Okay. Okay, so I'll read the question out. I'm sure you've all got it, but it's asking about backup solution with three-phase inverters. So we will have a backup solution by the end of this year. So the second half of this year, we should have a backup solution for three-phase and single-phase. It will work with a separate box that you simply connect to the grid, and then that connects to the inverter. And when your grid failure happens, it will isolate your existing supply from the grid and then go into backup mode. And we will be able to support PV generation and battery backup at the same time. So we're allowing our inverters to basically work off grid for a limited time. With high startup currents, it will unfortunately will have a limit, and if it does reach that limit, it will turn off and then restart again. It will not support three-phase loads, but it will support single phases on a three-phase system. So it won't do 400 volts between phases, but it will still support 230 volts per phase. If you've got any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Or if you want any other information, please email me and I'll sort that out. So back to the presentation then. Commissioning and configuring the troubleshooting. So we'll look at this. Hopefully you shouldn't have any major issues. The most important one is the update, to make sure that the inverter and the battery both update themselves, and you just need to follow the what's in the manual basically to make sure that everything is off, the battery's off, the inverter's off, and allow it to perform its update. Once it's performed the update, you can then switch on everything and start again. Again, using setup, which you're familiar with, so we won't dwell on these too long. This is what I was saying about the firmware installing, depending on how long the inverter's been on away from manufacturing. So if it's been 6 months, you may have a couple of updates to do. If it's pretty much as we expect all our products do, is to be a very short time before manufacturing installation, the firmware difference shouldn't be that great. So commissioning is the same as any other. Once you've done it, you set the language and the the grid settings and your language. And then you carry on as normal. So you've got the communication, the maintenance for arc fault circuit interruption, power control, and site configuration and status. So this is what we're going to look at now. This is purely for this product. So we go into maintenance, we go into firmware upgrade, and we upgrade from the server. Then we save the configuration and load it onto the battery. So all this is in the manual, so please don't worry. Once you've done a couple of them, it will become second nature. Then the other thing, because it's a battery, you need to tell it what to do, whether to do maximum self-consumption, so it saves when there's export and discharges when there's a need, or time of use, so you can set it to do what you wish every 15 minutes. So you could set it to discharge or not discharge, or charge from the grid at night, or not discharge during the day, or save it for the evening. So anything you wish. The storage control also allows you to set the limit of how much reserve you want in your battery. We recommend the most that you reduce it to is about 11%. You can go down to 9%, but 11% is pretty much it. Then you need to tell it to charge from the grid. So if you run your battery down, your battery won't go to 0%. It will go to 6%, and then it will charge again up to 9%, then reduce to 6% and upgrade to 9% should there be an issue, and waiting for either AC charge or for PV excess to charge it. You can also set the limit of discharge and things like that. So it's pretty flexible. Again, you've got on here a different one here. We've got a backup reserve on there of 30%. That's the other thing that you need to bear in mind when you do have the backup device, which when it comes is to make sure how much battery you want it to discharge to. So if you have a 24 kilowatt one like the BYD, you could set the discharge maximum to 50%. So you'll always have 12 kilowatts of battery there. You can then do configuration. So you've got turn on the batteries, turn on the LG battery, the circuit breaker, and make sure the BYD buttons are on and off. And then you can see on here what batteries you've got, and you can select the battery you wish. RS485 and CAN bus status, they should all be showing in the status, and they're pretty straightforward. The antenna installation, it's a bit of a tricky one because as you probably realize, the communication board is here and the cable has to travel through, and it's not long enough to go to the top. So that's why we allow you to put the antenna at the bottom, or you can make a little bracket or buy a little bracket, fix it to the wall, and then you can clip the antenna to that somewhere about here. So we're not too fussed of where you put that. As I said, you can put it underneath, or you can put it somewhere on the side. Monitoring. Let's see, I've got a question. Okay, so will the bigger inverters also be compatible with batteries in the near future? Yes, they will. This is the commercial inverters we class these as. So these will have a different battery. It will be like a module, and I can't remember the exact figures, but we will be supporting all commercial inverters, and you will be able to retrofit these. So the SC25K and above, absolutely. We're looking at the 15 kilowatts supporting those as well. So yep, that's all coming. So monitoring. Let me just press the button. If you're not familiar with the monitoring platform, this is what you would see online. So this would be on your laptop or your computer, not so much your mobile phone. That would be slightly different. But what you can see up here is you've got an overview at the top. You've got the dashboard layout analysis, this is now called, not the charts, reports, alerts, and admin. But this is a bit we really need to look at. So this bit here shows that the array and the arrow indicates where the power is going, the energy is going. So it's going to the home, then going to the grid. Why is it going to the grid? Because the battery is 100%. This one here, you can see that the grid is also importing and the home is now exporting. So the battery is now exporting to the actual home, but the PV is doing nothing. So there is a slight time delay in how quickly you might see that this turns on and off when you look at the dashboard. It's partly due to the time it takes the information to get from the inverter to the monitoring, and it reacts quicker than what you actually see it, to be honest. So what you need to pay attention to, okay, when your installation is when your installation is complete, make sure the battery circuit breaker is on, and configure the dip switch according to the connected battery manufacturer. Do you remember it had BYD and LG were different switch positions on dip switch 6? This one here, so BYD is up and LG is down. And then both dip switches here are on. So make sure you remember to your dip switches. And as it says here, if you don't follow the battery manufacturer's instructions, communication between the battery and the inverter may not work properly. So these are one of the things that you must pay attention to. Something you're not familiar doing with SolarEdge is installing a battery in this way, and also the configuration of the battery. We also have a battery grounding screw, and you can locate that on here, just on the casing of the inverter. And obviously, if you don't connect the cable correctly, the battery won't be grounded. Use the AC tunnel. I've already showed you where this was. This is the part that lifts out. The cable is then routed through, and you terminate it here and put the cable back. So put the AC tunnel back. Again, we spoke about this, about using 35mm cable and putting the lugs on the cable, putting the heat shrink on the cable, putting the ferrite bead on the cable, and then passing the cables through the inverter. That is the easiest way to do it. So from the inside out, that's the easiest way to do it. And don't forget, it's positive to positive and negative to negative. So when you make your cable, when you cut your cable and you put your lugs on it, make sure you mark up the positive cable at both ends, the same color. So some additional product information here. We've got supported configurations. We've got DC coupled, AC coupled to non-SolarEdge inverter, single storage inverter, and multiple storage units are supported now. So multiple storage units are supported. It's just the 2 batteries per installation that we're waiting for in March. And then we've got the batteries on here. Remember, we've got the BYD LVS 24 as well. So it's a bit of an old slide. I will update this one. Design rules are 5, 7, 8, and 10. The string design is exactly the same as a normal 3-phase inverter, 11.25 kilowatts per string, and the DC oversizing is 135%. So it's exactly the same as a normal inverter, just allows you to have this. And it's also supported in the designer as well. So next is looking at installing the power optimizer. As I already said, we've got the benefits of SolarEdge are that you've got the safe DC, you've got the module level, you've also got the output circuit interruption, but also the most important one is don't be confused just by saying, oh, I just need this because of shade. Shade is not static. Shade might be a wall or a building that's there now, whoops, but that tree is going to grow. The shading is going to change with the cloud. You're going to get animals sitting on it. You're going to get birds nesting on it. It's going to change. So this is the optimizers here. As you can see, this is the standard optimizers fitted to the roof underneath the module. And we need a spacing of 13 millimeters on the bottom now. So 13 millimeters on here, 10 millimeters here, 10 here, 10 here, and 10 here. And they just plug together with MC4s. We have the MC4s are made by Stubely, so ours or Staubly. Ours are 100% correct. Please make sure you use the same MC4s. You can get optimizers with Canadian T4s or TS4 or UTX Amphenol. We can get those available, but they are quite a few that will need to be done. Just for interest, we make 65,000 optimizers per day. Okay. That's how many we make and leave a factory each day, 65,000 a day. So there's an awful lot of optimizers being made. It's nice to know that I've actually remembered stuff and got the details correct. You can see I've got the spacing here of, I say 13 because it's a little bit easier, but 12.7, 0 on the back, so that can go flat to anything, 10 millimeters to the side, the top and bottom, and on the face of it, this bit here must be 12.7 or 13 millimeters. If you are connecting the optimizers to your rail or to your roof and you're not fitting the modules down, please make sure that you connect the strings together. So all MC4s should be then plugged together basically. And the two, so if we go back to here, the two short ones you can actually plug together. So if you're leaving them over the weekend without putting modules on, these are the string ones, they get plugged together to form your string. And these plug them together. It won't do any harm at all. Each one of them has a QR code on here. You can do a couple of different things. You can record them in your own laminated piece of paper in the physical representation of how they are, or you can have a roof and you can just put them like that, or you can use the QR scanner on your with a tablet or with a laptop, or you can use the Mapper app itself. So the Mapper app here is free, as I said. The beauty of this is it allows you to scan the optimizers before doing the inverter. And just go back, it seems to be running away with itself a little bit here. 1 second. So what we recommend is that you do it in Designer, create the site in Designer, export that site into the monitoring. When you've exported it into the monitoring, you then put that address into your mapping app, and your mapping app, as you're scanning the optimizers, that will automatically update onto the physical layout. You can have as many people as you want on that site using the mapper. They will be able to scan the optimizers and so on. If there's any confliction, it will notify all the people that have scanned the same optimizer. So as long as you're all using different logins, it will be perfectly fine. As many people as you want on that site doing it, and it will update automatically. You don't have to press save or update. It will do it automatically. You can do it the old-fashioned way by peeling the stickers off, putting it on a sheet of paper, and you can send it to SolarEdge support. We don't get many of these now, but you can, if you wish, you can send it to us to do, or you can simply do it yourself. Scan the stickers, and that's it. You can also scan, once you've put the pieces of stickers on a piece of paper, you can also scan them using the mapper as well. And then populate the site. Very important you do this, because then you know exactly where every module is, every single optimizer as well. And should there be any issues of shading or soiling or underperformance, module mismatch, you'll be able to identify that straight away. As we said, the long cables, they then plug into each other because they're part of the string, and the short cables go to the module. And obviously, if you're leaving it overnight, make sure that these are plugged together. The short cables, they're for the modules, and wait for the click. Make sure that they click. So one of the latest announcements that we have is extension cables. So people sometimes find with older modules that have been there, very early adopters have an older module, and they then want to put SolarEdge on there to get the maximum out of it, that they're not MC4 connections. So what you can do is you can make an extension lead up to 30 centimeters, so 300 millimeters, with the MC4 connection on one end, and then whatever connector that module has on the other. So you can do that. That's perfectly allowed. One of the other things that have changed is that if you have a optimizer that has 4 in the prefix, the part number, or is from 4219, you're allowed to extend that up to 8 meters on the plus and 8 meters on the minus. The compact ones, if you're familiar with those, you can extend those up to 10 meters. Okay. Not on the M1600 though. It says here, connectors are watertight only when firmly inserted and locked. Do not leave them unconnected overnight or in wet conditions. Once the dampness gets into the optimizer and then you plug it into the module or to each other, it's not going to go anywhere. It will stay there and will cause a problem with communication. Two modules connected in series for single power optimizer, and then you've got some optimizers have a few inputs. So some are connected in parallel, some are in series depending on the voltage or current of the modules. Just make sure you look at the data sheet for this and the manual as to how you should connect them. Make sure that the cables are secure. It's a very important one here. These are secure. These have got cable ties on them. Cable ties are not the best in the world because they will deteriorate over time because they're only plastic. So they will basically become brittle and snap off. What you don't want is this cable rubbing. So these cables underneath here, they may be rubbing against the metal. They may be rubbing against the ballast here, the brick or the roof itself, or a tile. And also don't secure the optimizers. These are very old optimizers with cable ties. What will happen is that they will basically, the cable insulation will break. You can see on here, this one is pulled right round as well. So be careful how you connect them. We don't want any stress or strain on the connections. Otherwise, you'll get an issue with insulation resistance, with ground fault issues as well. And they can be attributed to the cable itself chafing, the cable being stretched, as you can see on here. So stretched, connectors not connected in the right manner, and things like that. So please be careful with how you connect stuff. Cable ties are okay, but they're not going to last forever, so you can use metal cable ties. This just stops the cables from moving. Another thing is to make sure that you have the correct polarity. If you connect your test lead with the plus in the right one and the minus in the right one, and then connect it to the cable, you will get the correct polarity. If, however, you've got minus, it means that you have the polarity either on one of the cables here is incorrect or one of the cables up here is incorrect, and you're getting reverse polarity. The inverter will not start with reverse polarity. If you have a minus voltage on there, the inverter will not start, okay? And then connecting strings extensions. So with a residential system, you can have up to 150 meters. So from here, it's 150 meters in red, 150 meters in here. So everything in red is up to 300 meters in total, but 150. So 150 meters maximum here, 150 meters here. As long as all of it adds up to 300 meters, you don't have a problem. And for an inverter over 25 kilowatt, let's go back one, you can have up to 700 meters, okay? Now I've put on here about extension cables. We've already spoken about extension cables, but here is the prefix. So P, 4, you can then extend them for 8 meters plus and 8 meters minus. And you can see on here the week 4219, and that's represented here. So the S and J is the manufacturing plant. The 50 is the week number, and the 19 is the A. And that's the same for all SolarEdge products. The first two letters are the manufacturing plant where it came from. The next one is week and then year. So anything that has a 4 on it or it has these information, you can extend up to 8 meters plus or minus. With the compact optimizer, you can do 10 meters on the minus and 10 meters on the plus. And between row to row, you're allowed to do those as long as you don't exceed the 700 meters or 300 meters, as we talked about earlier. Again, adapter cables were already mentioned. Basically, if you have to connect to a module that's not a MC4 connector, you can, by all means, that's not a problem, but just make sure that you don't exceed 30 centimeters. Pairing of the optimizers. Well, we've already spoken about this. You know the three ways. One is with the switch over 5 seconds from one position to P position and release. If you hold that for over 5 seconds, it will pair. You can do the pairing in the setup, or you can do the pairing from the monitoring. So the next one is the SolarEdge energy meter with Modbus connection. This is the meter we've talked about earlier for the storage, and you can see on here it's the same meter. The position of this is at the grid, and the reason we want it at the grid is so we can get the import and export reading from the grid. We don't want it on a load, we don't want it anywhere else. This is where it has to be. So export and import is basically what goes to the grid and what comes in. Very good information that the inverter needs, because then it will tell the battery whether to charge or discharge as to what's happening. The other terminology is consumption, consumption meter, self-consumption, and production. So you can do all this with the meter as well, depending where you put it. But we mainly want it on the import and export here. Oh, wrong way. So product description, let's have a look at it. For residential commercial installations, it can do all the things we've just spoke about. We need it for maximum self-consumption, for export limit, things like that. Supports single and three-phase grids and has CTs. This here is the power, neutral, L1, L2, L3. And then we've got CT3 here. It does say underneath, so be careful you don't get confused. So CT3, CT2, CT1, and then 1, 2, and 3. These do not relate to this, so don't get confused. And then you've got, oops, then you've got BAG connections on here. This is what you get in the packet. You get the meter, you get an instruction book, you get some screws, and you get the DIN rail mounting bracket here. So what would you use it for? Let's have a look. So you want to get the correct information, so what the inverter is doing, so you can measure production. The CT would be measured by or installed by the inverter, and that would measure the production. Application 2 is export and import. Again, the meter's in the same place, but the CT is now at the grid area, and the grid arrow is pointing to the grid. For consumption, it's pointing to the load. Okay, so we go back one. Oops. So for export and import, it's pointing towards the grid, and for consumption, it's pointing towards the load. So the connection options, so RS485 here, obviously it goes to this one here. We spoke about RS485 cable and Cat5 and Cat6 and which one's better. You can see on here how we've got RS485 with leader and follower on one bus, and then the meter is on the other bus. So RS485-1 and RS485-2. Both of them are supported. And remember to do the dip switches for end of line for both of them. So if it's the leader, you must do the end of line dip switch, and the very last follower, you must do the dip switch. And the same for here. This one here has got, you'll see the dip switches later on. This has a dip switch on it, and the inverter has a dip switch as well. You can also support a commercial gateway. Again, they have two RS485s, one for leader and for followers, and also one for meters. And you can use it either one. It doesn't matter which one you use. So the meter interfaces, let's have a look. Yep. L1, L2, and L3 CTs. These are L1, L2, and L3. And then we've got the BAG connections here. Please don't get confused with this. Please look at the embossing as well. And you should have a much better sticker on here now as well. Okay, so please don't get confused with that. The lights here, 1, 2, and 3, this is flashing, 2 is flashing as well, is operation is normal to blink, communication is normal to blink, and yellow indicates total energy measured. Okay, so they all should be blinking, but at different times. These are your dip switches here for ID. Remember that we can have ID 1, 2, or 3. And you can set that on your setup connections, which we will look at later on. Whoops. And you can see on here that factory default is obviously 2, is that one is up. And you can see on here where that is at the bottom. And that's ID 2. Okay. This is the end of line, not terminated factory default. So terminate 1 and terminate 2. Okay, the dip switch is here for the RS485. So installing the meter, you don't need to have a 20 amp MCB. You can have smaller than that. It really doesn't take much power to actually energize this. Here is your twisted pair. You can see that the blue and white with blue is a pair. The orange and white with orange is another pair. So that's a pair. You only need 2 cables. 2 cables for the B and the A, and 1 cable on its own for the G. So let's have a look at the mounting the meter and the transformers and so on. So we've got the DIN rail brackets, as we've said, connects to a DIN rail. They were in the box, so I think that's pretty straightforward. You can also fit it directly to the back of a box as well. These are the mounting holes for the DIN rail brackets. Here's your CT, and if you look in here, you can see, whoops, too far, sorry. Let's go back. You can see that the CT has an arrow pointing to source, to grid. Can you see? And this is what you need to make sure that points to the grid. Again, these are different ampage. This is 200 amp. And most importantly, you must use the SolarEdge CTs, because we run on 0.333 volts as opposed to a ratio. So you must use these ones. If you don't, it won't work, basically. So here's the CTs and the corresponding phases, L1, L2, L3, and you can see on here, and then so on. And then you've also got your RS485 connections, A being the plus, B being the minus, and G being the ground. CTs themselves are connected as such. Remember, this is CT number 3, 2, and 1. Don't worry, you will get this presentation as well, so you don't have to worry about writing things down or screenshotting or such. Oops. And here again is the communication board that we spoke about. Here are the dip switches. Here are the BAG connections you can see. Now you can have any of them. It doesn't matter which one you put your meter or your follower and leaders in, as long as you do the dip switches. There is only 2 products that I know that you must have a specific place. For the EV charging inverter, you must connect the meter in RS485 For the single phase storage inverter, not the one we're looking at today, but for the single phase one, you must use RS485 Other than that, you are free to put them in whichever one you wish. So meter configuration, it's all done by setup. You know how to get onto the inverter. You scan the QR code, you connect to it, and then you can go into commissioning. You've got site communication, not monitoring, site communication, RS485, RS485. You then set up the protocol. Remember, this is a meter, so we want to go to Modbus multi-devices. Why multi-devices? Because it allows you to put the battery on there. You can have 3 different meters, meter 1, meter 2, meter 3, and you can have battery 1, battery 2, okay? You can also do non-SolarEdge loggers as well. So battery 1, battery 2, meter 3, 2, and 1. Once you get to that stage of multi-devices, then you add a meter. You've got a choice of meter or battery. So you'll go to meter, and then you get meter 1. This is the first one. What you'll notice, because it says meter 1, you'll also see, whoops, go back, it will say device ID 1. So you'd have to change this to 2. Do you remember how the meter has a dip switch of 2? It was set to ID 2. The CT should automatically happen, and then you just choose what one. We always recommend export and import as the best one. That's what we recommend you use. These are different features on here, as I said: production, export and import, consumption, site production, external production, all on here. This is the most common, export and import. This is automatically set for ID2 because we chose it. This has got ID2 on here. This has got ID2 on here, current rating of 100. You can set the current rating yourself, and at each point, just press done. When you've done all that, you can look in the status. You can see Modbus 1 of 1 because we're in RS485. You can see it's RS485, Modbus ID 2. That's perfect. Then we can see the import meter, the serial number. We can see a status is okay and what it's doing. If you don't have this here, if you don't see Modbus NC or something like that, it means not connected. If you see communication error, it will be your BAG connections. So always have a look at the BAG connections. If it's not the BAG connections, then it might be the meter to the CT connection. So just check those. But that's all it will be. That's a communication. The AC side is obviously the AC connection, but communication can either be the CT or BAG. Again, make sure that the correct CT is on the corresponding phase. So don't twist them together. Don't run them with AC cables. Try and make sure that they're separate. If they are too long, then please cut them to the longest one as such, or the shortest one. Make sure they're all the same length. Don't twist them together. Try and keep them separate. And please don't have coils of cable in your enclosure as well. Accessories, what have we got? Let's have a look. We've got the commercial gateway. This device here has the 2 RS485s at the top. This allows us to do the follower and leader and also connect to the meter. It also allows us to have sensors at the bottom. And it also allows us to do the PRI, so the power reduction interface at the top, which we showed you on the communication board. You can have up to 3 different sensors on here. So you can have a radiant sensor, ambient temperature, module temperature. You can have those 3 on it, or if you want to have wind, you have to have that on its own. These are the radiant sensor here. I can never remember which one it is, but one of these is the ambient and one of these is the module temperature. You can see on here the voltage range. So this is all pre-programmed. If you do have an issue with it, support will gladly sort it out for you. You should simply connect them to it and it won't be a problem. It will all be perfectly fine. There is one thing one point to raise. We do have a list at the bottom here. You will get this presentation with this, and it gives you the supported devices and what they are. And these are shown on here on the next slide. Some of these have a asterisk of 1 and some have 2. You can see on here the ones with one, or the ones with none, I should say, like this one here. So if you look at this one here, these ones, this one, and this one, which are your common ones here, these do not require a transformer. But these ones do. The numbers with 2, they require a transformer. So just make sure you've got the right part number. From my experience, you will always get the right one now. You won't be able to buy one that needs a transformer. So please don't worry about that. But just for your information, if you find that you've got old sensors and you're trying to use them on the CCG, just make sure you've got the right one. We do support pyranometer and wind velocity, wind direction. Again, these are the models that we support here. A firefighter gateway. Firefighter gateway is a device. It doesn't do the safety C. It doesn't control safety C, but it helps. These inverters themselves, as I said, if you were to turn the AC off, they would shut down to 1 volt per optimizer. If you were to disconnect the DC, cut the DC, if there was an arc fault and you had arc fault enabled, again, it would drop down to 1 volt. Even if you turn it off, it will drop down to 1 volt. What the firefighter gateway does is the firefighter gateway links to your fire alarm panel and also to an emergency stop. So if you were to discover a fire, you could press on the emergency stop and all of the inverters would ramp down, production would be down to 0. There'd still be AC, but production would be 0. That would mean that every single optimizer connected to this site would end up with below 50 volts per string or 1 volt per optimizer. The same way, if the fire alarm detects a fire, so your smoke detectors or heat detectors, they detect a fire, what will happen is it will then shut the or put a voltage on auxiliary contact. This will then get the information. The contact will turn off or open or close, and then again it will communicate to the inverters, and all the inverters will shut down production and they will wait until this device is reset. So this is normally put in the reception. You would then press the emergency stop, or the fire alarm will go off, and all the inverters will shut down. One of the most common things we get is people calling us saying, "Oh, we've just we did a fire alarm test the other day, and none of the inverters have come back on." And we say that's perfect, because it's exactly what it should do. It shouldn't come back on until you've reset the device. Okay, so that does its job. This is just a link between emergency stop and a fire alarm to get them to do it. The inverters have safety C. The inverters will do all the safety C just as they are anyway. This is just a link between the fire alarm panel. Great device. So the gateway itself, let's have a look. Again, supports up to 31 devices. This is the leader. These are the followers. RS485 cable gives you a kilometer. Cat 5, Cat 6 gives you 100 meters. So exactly the same. You can have the sensors connected to it. We've already talked about the sensors on here. You can install the sensors. We recommend that the sensor is level with the module. Also, the ambient temperature and the module temperature is associated with this as well. If you have different arrays, so different azimuths, different tilts, then you would need a sensor, the group of sensors, the irradiance, the ambient, and the module at each. So you can see on here we've got different angles. So what you've got here, you would expect to see on this side as well. And all that will contribute to the performance ratio. Contact support, we've got a few minutes left and we should be able to cover this. I'll just skip through a couple of slides just to give you the most important information. But basically, support is here to help you, to train you, to educate you before you go to site, while you're on site, and after you've left site. So that's what support's for, and we will help in any way we can, before, during, and after. Most important, if you do have an issue, is describe the problem as best you can. put down as much information as you can, what you've done, what you found, serial numbers, and also pictures, as many pictures of the thing as possible. If it's a communication issue and you've got loads of pictures, put pictures on there. The more pictures, the more the merrier. When you go to support, you get the choice of I am a system owner or I am an installer. Obviously, you want to click on I am an installer. I've just got a question here. Okay, some companies already have systems with weather data and measure energy from bigger consumptions, heat pumps, EV charger, washing machines, etc. Due to charge, discharge, or plan for battery. When will SolarEdge include these things? So these are coming. All these things are coming. Okay, we will be adding a lot more to My SolarEdge. My SolarEdge app is changing. It will be a version 2 will be out very soon, and you will see lots of exciting stuff on there. So yeah, I am an installer, and then enter your email and your password. When you've done that, you can then open a new case. You can look at knowledge base for information, application notes. You can look at cases you've closed, or you can see the ones that you have ongoing. When you do open a case, it's important that you give as much information, so whatever it is, and the subject that will always appear. So if your subject is building 1, 2, 3, it will come up subject building 1, 2, 3. So your subject, whatever you want to put in here, you put in there. Fill out the information, some of the mandatory with the red asterisk, but most of all, good description. You've got support on here. You've got my email. You'll be able to get through to support as well. Most of you probably do use a support for the UK, but we do have supports for different regions as well. Phone numbers, again, we have UK phone number, but we also have rest of world, and we have other phone numbers on here as well. When you open a case, it will be looked at, and if we find that we have all the information, we will give you an RMA. If we don't have all the information, we'll ask you for some more information. We're not being difficult. It's just that we need information to be able to process it. Once it's processed, you will be sent a replacement, and you will then have to send, if it's an inverter, that replacement back to us. So that will have to come back to SolarEdge. If you keep the inverter, if you sell that inverter, or if you do something else with that inverter, you will have to send every single product that you have that's faulty back to us before we will send you a good one. It's about trust. We trust you as an installer, and we trust your judgment and things like that. So if you do find you have a problem, we'll send you a replacement part, and if it's an inverter, we want that back. If it's an optimizer, then we'll probably ask you to dispose of it with the WE regulations, or maybe you have to give that back to your distributor, depending where you are. But that is it. I've finished. I've got a minute to go. More than happy to answer as many questions as possible. I will stop sharing my screen now. So if you have any questions, please ask away. Other than that, hand over to anybody that wants to take over.
Thanks, Jason. Yes, there is a question in the Q&A in the chat.
Okay.
And while you're reading it, I would like to also empathize that anyone who has questions, you can either type them in the Q&A or in the chat, or you can also raise your hand, and we can allow you to ask a question, so we can unmute you.
Okay, so the question in the Q&A was about batteries. So that is coming in My SolarEdge 2. So all that should be available soon. So that's the Q&A. I'm going to have a look at the chat now. See if there's anything on there for me. No, I don't think so. Open, answered. No, can't see anything new.
Uroš, yes, we are recording this webinar both in English and in Slovenian. So you will be able to find the recordings, I believe, on Solarity YouTube channel. Our marketing team will upload them hopefully within a few days. So you will receive a notification about it in your email. Jason, maybe I can ask a question, because we had a poll about the support from SolarEdge, and there were quite a few people who were interested in the trainings. Maybe you were mentioning, or Petr was mentioning it in the basic seminar
Yes,
on Friday.
I will find the appropriate screen and then I will share it with you.
Yeah.
1 second. Okay. Yes, so what we have is, here is the SolarEdge website. We have different things on here. You've got login, which takes you to either the Edge Academy, the Monitoring, Design, or Alliance. So Edge Academy. You can also get to the Edge Academy by education. So if you click on education here, I imagine you can all see my screen. I'm hoping you can. Click on training.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So click on training, and here we go. And it opens up. And you've got, want to learn more about SolarEdge, you've got seminars here, webinars, and you've got the Edge Academy. So I'll take you to the Edge Academy shortly, but I just want to show you something here. You can scroll down the bottom, find the region that you want. So at the moment for UK and Ireland, we've got some webinars that are recorded and some that are on. And then we've got some recorded content. So these are the ones I've done about different subjects. Energy meters, things like that, physical layout, the alerts, the analysis. So very short webinars there, about 20 minutes that you can look at. You can sign up for the other webinars, and we can go to the Edge Academy. Click on here. Here we go, signing in as me. And we've got, this is the Edge Academy. This is what you would see. You've got a course catalog here. You've got my courses, resume courses. So we can look at the course catalog, and there will be 2 or 3 courses open to you. They will be fundamental training. You might get access to this one. There's a fair amount of courses that I can actually see. So if I go back to here, dashboard, I go to my courses. We've got new alerts training you should be able to see. So customer training. Let's have a look. So there's some product training that's available. North American team do that a lot, but we can also do the fundamental. Let's see if we can find that. SolarEdge fundamental training. This is the it's not basic. It's a medium sort of training. And what you can see is we cover different things. So introduction, power optimizers, inverters, PV system design, monitoring, and then communication, certification, and know before you go. So you do get a certificate. This is a certificate you get. And you can put this on LinkedIn. You can show it off. So this says I've completed the SolarEdge fundamental training. And when it's valid to, there's generally 2 years they're valid for. And you have like sections like this is a little video, 2.46, 2 minutes 46. And then you get some other questions. So you might have a little video, then we get some questions about it. Probably take you about an hour and a half to complete the whole lot. But very good, yes. And then we've got check yourself questions. So that's very, very good. So fundamental is here, and I'll give you the link for this. I'll put this in the chat so you can find it easily. And that's in the chat now. So that's that really.
Thank you. Great. And I think that the question, there were also people who are interested in in-person trainings. However, as far as I know, those are not available in all countries. They're only available in like Netherlands, France.
Okay, so for actual Zoom calls, we can do something. We can do some training via Zoom. Face-to-face training, as soon as the restrictions lift, obviously it's different for the region, but I'm sure we can do something. We have field engineers, we have people in regions that will be able to help. So face-to-face training, on-site training, if you have a big site and you're nervous and you're not sure about something, yeah, we can help. We can help. I'm sure we can help.
Okay, so if there is one more question on if you have authorized partner in Bulgaria. I'm not sure if this is a question towards SolarEdge or to Solarity. So
Probably
from
you.
Solarity side, I can only say that we do have several installers as far as I know. My colleague Nicola knows better, but you can email us or email Nicola, and we can take it from there. We can help you. And Jason, if you know, does SolarEdge have any authorized partners?
So Petra would be better to answer that, who you had on
Yeah.
Monday, I think. Oh, sorry, on Friday, I should say.
Yeah, I will type Peter's email to the answer. All right, so I believe if we have no more questions, then thank you very much, Jason, for the presentation.
It's been my pleasure. I look forward to doing a next one with you. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you everyone for participating. And as we said, the recording will be available in a few days in our YouTube channel. And you will receive the presentations as well over email. So everything that you saw today on slides, you will be able to access later. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.